great. I'd just like to get started by asking how you all got, involved in the film. I'm sure, it's not just, we had an audition.
I was born.
At an early age, I suspect.
Stephen had seen me, I believe, in the Howling. And I went in to audition for used cars. Didn't get it. But he just saw the mother in E.T. because he works very far in advance in his work. And so when E.T. came along, they just called it and offered it to me. It's kind of a Hollywood story.
I went through the audition process sort of
sorry.
late in the audition process.
How old were you?
I was 14. I was doing a play off Broadway, and I missed all the preliminary auditions, but somebody had seen the play I did and wanted me to read for a movie called The Entity, Barbara Hershey. They said, we'll fly you out to California from New York. I didn't get that, and they said, I'm so sorry, this didn't work out for you. I'll make a phone call. I hear Steven Spielberg has an interesting role for somebody your age. So in a way, I lucked out too, although I would have loved to have been in both. But
I know, it kind of worked out, this one, didn't it?
yeah,
It
this
did.
was nice. Yeah.
Henry, how'd you get involved?
So I was involved pretty late in the auditioning process because they had kind of cast Elliot with another young actor initially.
Do you know who it was?
He had never, I do.
Yeah, but Robert
So-
knows. Yeah.
But they never settled on it. They were never quite right with it.
See, oftentimes what they were doing, like Robert was part of the process when they were, they would get different kids together and, play D&D and stuff like this and see how they all interacted as a group. It's kind of like a chemistry test.
Yeah, and one of the auditions was at Harrison Ford's house. We played Dungeons and Dragons with his kids, who at the time he was living with the woman who wrote the screenplay, Melissa Matheson. And his kids were our exact ages. His oldest, Ben, was my age, and Willard is his other kid.
Yeah.
And that was
Michael and Elliot were kind of based on those two real boys.
And pretty much everybody, all the boys that you see in the movie playing D&D were the ones that ended up in the movie, except the boy who was playing Elliot. And it wasn't that he was an okay guy, but it was like he was very actory, kind of like he had an extensive list of credits, and I could tell it just wasn't quite a fit. And I think they saw that in the audition process. He was an accomplished actor, but anybody, see the film, and how could it have ever been anybody but Henry? And Stephen had the wisdom to realize that.
And Matthew, you were so young when you got involved in this too.
Yeah, it started out, I used to go to, I was born without legs, I don't know if anyone knows that, but I used to go to UCLA, I know, it was a train accident, it was a shark. It's more exciting, right? And it was...
You tell the chicks it was a shark.
Right.
A surfing accident. It was a surfing accident.
This was not a boating accident.
So anyway, I used to go to UCLA Medical Clinic for physical therapy because they wanted to figure out how am I going to walk. So they gave me prosthetic legs, different contraptions to get around on, but a skateboard always worked for me. So that didn't work out, but Universal Studios got in touch with my old doctor there to see if there was anyone who was of a short stature to fit in the costume, and my doctor recommended my name, and that's when they called me. So I went down to Carlo Rambaldi's studio to do the screen test to see if how it would work out, basically. So I walked on my hands, and Spielberg was impressed, and he basically told me I had the job. But it wasn't on video camera, no. It was famous.
Was that before or after shooting had started? Do you know?
That's a good question. I think it might have been before.
Okay. And which scenes are you in the suit?
So I like to call myself the stunt ET because they realized that the main actors that played ET wouldn't be able to do any of the scenes where ET fell down, got hit by the refrigerator door or whatever. Robert told me recently that Spielberg, he reminded me actually that Spielberg came to me a couple days before and asked me if I'd be willing to do those scenes. And I said, because he didn't really tell me why. I said yes to everything. So thankfully I said yes to that. I got some of the most memorable scenes in the movie, so it was awesome.
I mean, you don't know how athletic Matt was and is, but
Oh
at the
God.
time, okay, his biceps were like he was,
Yeah.
jacked. He was jacked, and he was so athletic. As far as I remember there was one kid we didn't like.
Oh, this
Another
was,
one
that was amazing.
Who will remain nameless, but we were
Yeah.
all at school together. So
He
we
was
were all,
he was Robert Standen.
yeah, it was my. Well, I missed him.
No,
I don't know. He was kind of teasing one of the girls. That was kind of like
Rusty.
Rust.
Yeah, his name was
Rusty.
Rusty.
Right. Okay. Well, now, sorry, Rusty. But he was teasing one of the girls, and Matt sort of stood up. Matt, in a valiant gesture, sort of went up this ramp that was on the back lot at Laird Studios. Went up the ramp and launched himself off the ramp and tackled this guy because he would stop him from,
He launched himself off the ramp, grabbed onto the post
That's right. That's right.
that held up the porch, swung around it, and hit the guy.
Wow.
Face.
Cut that out. Yeah. It was really cool.
I take a bow, but I'm not physically equipped to take that.
Best thing about doing these things is I always learn 15 new things I never knew.
Me too.
But Dee, how was it being the adult in the room?
What? What?
Oh no, you get that.
That's a big
Plenty of adults in
illusion.
the room.
Big illusion. That's not true. I was a good mother to all of you.
Yeah.
I took my job very seriously as the mother in the role and as the mother off screen taking care of all of these kids.
She really, and with the scenes where E.T. was dying,
I
Drew was very upsetting for Drew. And, they have some really great moments on screen where she's holding Drew and Drew's asking her if she's dying, if E.T.'s dying, and she says, I'm afraid so, sweetheart. I'm about to start crying right there. And can we wish him to come back? But that was sort of her role with Drew. She was taking care of her off screen too, because Drew was very impressionable, and she acted like she was.
Well, she thought E.T. was alive.
Yeah.
I mean, and Stephen found her over talking to E.T. when he was standing in a corner, not alive. And so then he appointed a couple of people to work the hydraulics of the hydraulic E.T. All of the time in case Drew went over there.
So it would react. It couldn't speak, but it would lift an eyebrow
Or
something
blink.
with something she was saying.
But I went to get her on the adjoining soundstage, and I said, okay, Drew, now we're gonna go do the scene where E.T. dies, but E.T.'s just acting like we are. And I know, Dee, do you think I'm stupid? So I pick her up, we walk over, she takes one look at E.T. on the table and goes, he's dying! He's dying! And of course, Stephen's going to roll it.
Gotta get this.
I mean, at that age, reality and fantasy are pretty much the same thing. So they go in and Danny and Cujo don't even get me started.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Hey, Matt, I'm sorry.
No, go
Matthew, you were drunk E.T., weren't you?
Yes.
Oh, wait, even in the scenes when E.T. wasn't drunk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and that's how we got his distinctive walk, too, because you were walking on your hands.
No, I was really drunk. I snuck a few shots before the 50th. No, yeah, that's true.
You involved me, you corrupted all of us.
Yeah.
But I had a very awkward gait because my walk for ET was different than the walk that I normally do, and so I stand up in ET, and I can't really do that. I have to demonstrate that too because I have a rotator cuff issue. But yeah, that was part of the appeal. Is I had a different walk than the rest of the ET guys and girls. That's why I got that.
Now, I'm going to ask a fanboy question now. Henry, was that your first kiss?
Well, actually, in first grade,
Leticia Hernandez cornered me
Oh, wait, is this the Me Too? Is this the Me Too?
no, it's it was the fake kitchen in the classroom. And I was sick. We were both sick, so we were staying in from recess. And and she kissed. That was my first kiss.
Nice. Glad you have it. Everyone can see it now.
But I think Erica Liniak is more impressive.
And you didn't tell her it was your first kiss.
I didn't have to tell her it wasn't my first kiss.
Well, everyone, I know you've all got some questions for our cast, and of course there are 2 microphones set up, so anytime you want to line up and get your questions out, I know you were waiting patiently long.
We'll answer anything.
Yeah. Really? Well, do you all get free Reese's Pieces for life? If not, why?
We do when we come to the cons.
Yeah.
The cons.
People provided us yesterday with a box each.
I want to
They offered that to M&Ms, and M&Ms turned them down.
Not
They
even.
said the day after the film came out, somebody got fired.
It wasn't even a money issue. They weren't asking for an endorsement or the commercial placement, product placement. It was just the fact that they didn't want their product associated with, as they put it, a monster from outer space. So they $10 million profit the next year, the first year that ET came out, just from the advertising.
But the biggest movies that had aliens in them to that date, predating ET, all of the aliens were malevolent. They were all villains. So people didn't want to be associated with that commercially, right? It wasn't until it became a sensation that people were like, oh, aliens are pretty cool, I guess.
There were a few misunderstandings, and to be fair, they didn't see the whole script. They would only send the pages that had.
We didn't see the whole
Yeah, we didn't see the whole
script.
script. But they sent just a few pages to Gary Gygax, the creator of Dungeons and Dragons, just to get permission to use the name in the beginning. And there was a stage direction in the script that said something like, "There's money on the table, and there's like a cigarette going, and all this stuff." And he thought that implied that we were gambling on the game, when the money was for the pizza. But he thought so. He said, "I refuse to allow Dungeons and Dragons to be associated with gambling." So that's why that wasn't used.
I respect him for that. There's people wanting that.
I'm shocked if it was gambling.
Yeah.
Just one more for me. Is it true that Harrison Ford filmed a cameo and it was cut?
Yes.
Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah, he was the principal. He was the principal in the office when Elliot gets taken in for setting the frogs free.
So he had a scene with me and a scene with you.
Because when you come to pick me up at the school, you guys had an exchange.
Yeah.
I was so jealous. I was like, Raiders had just come out. I was like, Henry came back to school. Because we weren't filming, we were in school. So Henry came back to school and he said, "I just did a scene with Harrison Ford." He wasn't like that, by the way, Henry. That I characterize him like that. He was not like that, but he was excited about it because we were both like huge Raiders fans, huge Star Wars fans.
So did you at least flirt a little with Han Solo?
No, I was very married to the very hot Christopher Stone.
I'm gonna be happy Mom Ubered me, so I feel good. We've got a question over here. Let's go.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. We're very honored you're here. We just thank you so much for what you've given us all through the years. I actually have a 2-part question for you. One is, did you realize at the time when you were doing this that it would become the legend that it is now? And the second thing, maybe a little funny question, but if that had happened in real life to you guys as individuals, whether you believe in aliens or not, it doesn't matter, but if, say that actually happened, how would you have reacted?
Well, first of all, I don't think any creative person goes in going, "Ooh, we're going to make a blockbuster." I don't. You just go in to do your best work and be as truthful in it as you can. And so much goes into making a hit, you guys. The music, the editing, when it's released, if the public is ready, you know, emotionally for that kind of story.
If the executives are behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. So no on part one. Does anybody have something to add?
I had no idea. To me, I thought it was a much more personal story for Stephen, and I thought that was going to be sort of his catharsis of getting a lot of problems he had worked out. And then at the same time, Poltergeist, which he was heavily involved in making, it was coming out at the same time, so I thought, okay, this one is going to be his blockbuster. And I saw the screening of that, and I said, wow, this one's going to be the one that takes off. But I had seen a version of E.T. without the music, which is very different. It was much more somber and
Boring.
But it connected with people on such a personal level that they had to see it over and over again, or bring their grandparents to see it. Or,
It just reaches into your heart and grabs you, you know, forever. It's going to do that.
It was really interesting you mentioned that, because last year Richard Dreyfuss was a guest here, and he talked about seeing a cut of Jaws without the music. And he said, this movie's awful.
It's incredible what
it's
music.
funny.
Yeah.
It's funny what it adds to it.
And emotionally, the music is so much a part of the emotional ride that you go on.
It's a Spielberg.
I mean, it's such that orchestral soundtrack by John Williams is such a part of it that they left a Michael Jackson song at the height of Thriller off of the end of the movie because it worked so well with the score at the end of the movie that they didn't want to interrupt that with the biggest star at the time.
Neil
Tribute
Diamond
song.
wrote a song for it too.
Burt Bacharach wrote the song. Neil Diamond and Turn On Your Heartlight
Yeah.
was all over the radio. I hated hearing it at the time.
I think it made it to number 5.
Yeah.
To
One of
answer
those-
the last part of your question, I would hope that I would embrace it in life and help it to get home. Yeah.
Okay, how about a question over here?
The E.T. voice. So
Yeah.
they had a few different people at different times, but the woman that ended up being kind of the main source for the voice, what was a lady named Pat? What was her
Pat.
name? Welsh. Pat Welsh, yeah. And
She was Welsh like you.
yeah, she was
Deborah
Welsh.
Winger.
Yeah, Joe.
Deborah Winger was also, yeah.
I found out until recently she was my neighbor, and I thought she initially was going to be like they were gonna use her voice, but she was just doing a favor for Stephen,
Yeah.
so he could edit with a voice that sounded sort of vaguely alien. It's like it was never supposed to be her, according to her. Like they were doing something called a click track, which is yeah, and I had not known that. I thought she, just had gotten too well known that people would recognize her voice. She said, no, she was just doing a favor for Stephen.
She had a cameo, right?
Yeah, she's in the film.
She's
Halloween scene.
she's in the Halloween scene. She's the
She's
doctor.
got a goblin mask or something on, and she's holding a little poodle.
And she limps.
Like I said, I learn all these new things.
I have a question over here.
So this was the biggest movie on the planet for like several years after it came out. We think of blockbusters as being big budget, but when I go back and look at the movie, it's really small scale. It takes place in one
Very
neighborhood. You could take out a couple of special effects and it would be like an indie film almost. To that extent, could you talk about when you were filming in the locations, what it felt, what the shooting schedule was like, how many locations you guys were at, and how that compares to other movies that you did subsequently? How it felt in comparison?
I'm not on that one.
First of the film, it was all on stage.
Yeah.
Everything was on stage.
Yeah, it was pretty standard. I mean, the process wasn't very different than any other film.
See, I would disagree with
Oh, you would?
because we started at 7, we ended at 7.
Oh,
Most
because of the
days,
kids, because of the
because
kids,
it
yeah.
was all the kids, and you can't legally work them. So most independent films, you can start at 7 and work till 9, 10, 11, 12, you know, so in that respect. And also, this was supposed to be Stephen's little film. Poltergeist was supposed to be the big hit, you know. And I think sometimes maybe that made it better, you know, because there wasn't the pressure of, and it was only,
Self-financed.
the budget was $1 million.
It was 11 million. The ET itself accounted for $1.5 million of our budget. But also, he had self-financed it because it had been turned down by every studio. Universal agreed to release it, but he had to set up financing for it, which meant there was no studio executives like looking around saying, "What are you doing this? What are you doing that?" And he brought it in under budget and on time. I think even under time. But it was, 66-day shooting schedule, and we finished on day 65.
Which is
You know,
ridiculously fast.
so because he edits in his head and he has storyboards and everything, so he knows what he wants before he films it, instead of filming everything long takes and then deciding in the editing room later.
Interesting, the tone of the film too, because there is conflict in it, but there's really no big villain in it, except if you count the guy with the keys. And even he turns out to be a nice guy at the end.
Yeah.
And he's Peter Coyote, and he sounds great.
Yeah, we love Peter.
How about over here?
Well, first, not my real question, but just because it was brought up, you say Harrison got cut out. Is he still the voice of the unseen teacher in the dissection scene?
No, that was a different.
Is
actor.
he trying
That
to
was a different
sound like him?
character.
Because it really does.
No, I don't know, but that actor was there for the first week as the teacher in the
That was
classroom.
Mark Hamill.
That was Mark. No.
We're making news at
Name of the
Pensacon.
actors that were in the movie. The cop was Richard Dreyfuss.
But my actual question, and this is a bit off topic, is for Henry. The moderator had mentioned you playing Norman Bates before. Now that was the first time you worked with Mick Garris, right?
That's correct.
And you worked with him a couple other times as well, including Desperation. And it seems like that may have led to these other Stephen King adaptations, and of course Dee's done one as well. Was there any specific through line there? Like, was that on purpose for you or your agents, or?
No, not at all. I met Mick through Psycho 4, and when I worked on that because the producer and the director, or the producers of the show, I had known them and worked with them on Cloak and Dagger when I was younger, and so they thought of me, and then they brought me in to read for Mick, and Mick liked my read and wanted me in it, and then he cast me in a couple of other things after that because we had a pretty good experience, I think, working together. But no, the Stephen King thing was purely happenstance. I think just because.
Stick around Hollywood long enough, you're gonna wind up in a Stephen King adaptation.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many, and there's so many that get done, and I was just in the right place at the right time for those projects.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thanks for having us.
All right, over here.
So what other sci-fi movies do you guys like?
Well, I'm a huge fan of The Thing and Alien. I went to see Alien when I was 9. I begged my parents that I could go see Alien. It was I had the most fascinating ad campaign, and I flipped out at the chest burster scene. And I had to leave the theater. Completely embarrassed my mom and my dad. So I've been able to stomach it since then. Molded.
I don't blame you at all. We're just like,
Yeah.
anyway.
I was a huge Star Wars fan. all of the Star Wars films, well, the original Star Wars films. Yeah, those were a big influence to me. And actually, when I saw Star Wars in theaters, and when it was released, I thought, that's pretty cool that you can do that as a living, and I would like to do that. And that was kind of the first time I had thought about being an actor.
When he's showing E.T. his toys, I can vouch for this, because when he's showing E.T. his toys, he used to have the Darth Vader little carry case with all the little action figures in it, and those were Henry's toys that he used to just carry around on the set. You know.
Yeah,
It's my collection. I had allowance. I would make $5 a week, and I would go to Woolworths, and I would buy one action figure, and I would put the next one on layaway, and then the next week when I come back, I'd get 2 action figures and put one in layaway. And so in a matter of weeks, like I had all 12 figures, and then I just couldn't stop.
If you were smart, you would have had them now and sold them for $500,000.
Yeah. But
You know,
I was
I
never
like-
smart.
I like the Star Wars movies for a whole different reason. Even back then, I liked it for the philosophy and for Yoda and for the truth that came out of those movies and the guidance that we all got from those movies. And now, not only do I spend a lot of time acting, my other business is energy healing and teaching people how to create their lives consciously. And so I don't think it's by any mistake that I was drawn into movies like E.T., And then, of course, so I spend half my life healing people from fear and the other half doing horror films. Somehow, it works really well for me.
I'm a little bit twisted, so I like dystopian type, the Terry Gilliam movies like Brazil, 12 Monkeys, those kind of, and I like anything time travel. I'm a sucker for frequency, anything that has some sort of time travel.
All right, thanks. How about over here?
Have any of you had the opportunity to mentor the younger generations? And if so, how's it helped you professionally and personally?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Have we had an opportunity to
Oh, I see.
young people? Yes. Does somebody else, I want to talk.
Other than my kids.
I was a teacher. I taught 9th and 10th grade. I had my own dancing studio for a long time. I had an acting studio in California for 18 years where I taught all the classes. And now through my healing work, I mentor lots and lots of young people.
I want to add a quick question here. Henry, could you give us the experience of making the Xfinity commercial back in 2019? If you haven't seen this,
Well,
Google
it was a day, and I was just. What struck me was, with technology where it is today, everything was just so much easier, and I was floored by the constraints that we had worked under in '82, and working under those technological restraints, and how tough it was to get certain things with the animatronic thing. The ET creature wasn't always functioning, firing on all cylinders. You
You
know,
have to go to Radio Shack all the time to get parts.
That's it sounds bad. But but it just struck me as how much easier it would have been to make that film today. But the way that we made it, the fact that everything was physical and everything was a real, it was a real gag. You know, it wasn't painted on. It's more personal, and it's just, it's like listening to a record on vinyl versus digital, because if you listen to a vinyl record, it's actually a physical sound, but a digital sound is not actually a physical sound. It's just, it's a reproduction of a physical sound, but it's not visceral, right? Like the thing that makes things real for people is when they're visceral. And I think E.T. is a very visceral experience for audiences.
Everything you saw E.T. do in the movie, we saw as we were acting with it. Everything. Like, you know, they did stuff where we're looking at tape from the spaceship and the bikes flying. But as far as E.T. was concerned, it was very personal. We had the same experience you did.
Yeah, it was kind of like working with another actor for me, which is weird, I know to say, but it was. He was so real to me.
It would do different reactions on different takes, depending on how you said the lines or the tone of voice you had.
All right. What you got over here?
So I grew up with you guys, and I'm
Hi, honey. Have you been good?
But my thing is, so we go to Universal every now and then in the studios and like ride E.T. the ride. And every time I get emotional, just that feeling of being a kid again.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any like experiences with that? Like you go to the ride?
Every time I go to the ride, every time I watch the movie. I must watch the movie from personal appearances 150 times, probably. I cry every time he takes off. Every single time. Every time I close that, here it comes, see? Every time I close that door and Elliot is standing there, and I thought he'd been lost.
I cried in the part I mentioned with you're holding Drew, and she asked and if she could wish for him to come back, and you say, I don't think so, honey. And I cry when he's giving a speech to E.T. when he thinks he's dead inside the thing.
Yeah.
And he's framed that beautiful shot, like the Kubrick shot of him through the window of the thing, and you see Peter Coyote on the other side. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
All right, we have a few more minutes left. Let's go over here.
Hey, I just want to say that y'all are such a huge part of my childhood, and I'm so grateful that y'all are here. But I have a question. Were there any set props that you walked away with when shooting?
I think a lot of dice went missing on the set. I seem to remember that.
Everybody put your phones down.
The statute of limitations is probably done
Let me rephrase
over
that.
40 years later, so we can.
What do you wish you had walked away with? And we'll put it like that.
Everything.
I wish we would have been allowed to keep our bikes.
Henry Star Wars toys.
My cat dress. I kept my cat.
I kept my costumes, the shirts. So.
Well, they were your shirts.
Yeah, a couple of them
Yeah.
were real shirts. So.
Matthew, you don't have an ET suit sitting at home, do you?
No. No.
Okay. All right. Over here.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you for being here. It's your presence is such a treat.
Thank you
for your work. I was wondering during the making of this, was there a moment where you just went, "What is happening right now?" and wow? Was there like a wow moment for you, or is it?
No.
No.
No, most of the time I was going to like, how much longer do I have to sit and listen to him? I mean, they went to school. I sat in my dressing room and sat in my dressing room and sat in my dressing room.
That's the thing. Like when you work with kids, when you're an adult,
And dogs.
and dogs, right? They don't have to shoot you out. They can keep you there all day. So
Doing nothing.
They're gonna do the kids first, and then they're gonna get to you later when the kids have to go home. So you sit around all day.
I mean, oh my God. You know, the big important scene where they take off and it turns into the rainbow. Like I had been sitting in my dressing room for days. And all of a sudden, the first AD comes, or no, it was the second AD. What was his name? Anyway, no, not Tom. Anyway, Dan came and, Dee, hurry up, we have to get this scene before lunch. And I went, okay, what scene are we doing? Well, while we're doing the scene, you know, where he takes off and turns into the rainbow and it's all emotional, and then we get to the set and Stephen goes, okay, all right, we gotta get this before lunch, and I'm going, what am I doing? And Stephen explains it again, he says, okay, roll it. And I don't know, I just saw the rainbow and I felt the tears. It was like crazy, you know, it was like one of the moments that was really important that you thought, well, I'm going to take a lot of time to prepare for this. And sometimes it's just better if you don't.
Not only coming in, waiting all day, but coming in at the at first call or whatever it was, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., getting in makeup because they had to have the adults ready to go in case something went wrong with the kids and, you know, they couldn't film the scene that they were going to do with the kids. You know, they had to have the adults ready to go as a backup.
The adult.
The adults.
Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. They had to have Ms. Wallace ready for her close-up. But
Mr. DeMille.
Yeah, but it's really I know now how hard that had to have been because you're prepared to go. But
yeah, Stephen asked me one time, he said, why does that bother you so much, Steve? I said, Mr. Spielberg, actors are like racehorses. You pick them up from their stall and they go, oh, I'm getting ready to run. The race is coming. And you take them and you groom us and you brush our hair and you put our makeup on and you take us to the gate. And pretty soon, if we don't get to run, we just want to break the gate down. And he looked at me and went, oh, I never understood that before. Next day, on the set, 7 a.m. never worked.
All right, I think we have time for one more over here.
Thank you. I have a question for Henry Thomas. So I was looking at IMDb. I had no idea you had such a prolific acting career, and very impressive. And I saw I saw that you had done some soundtracks. Did you do any songwriting or is it singing?
Yeah, I've played music for quite a while, and I managed to, bend the producer's ear a couple of times and get a couple of my songs on the soundtracks of films that have been in, and a couple that I haven't been in. But yeah, I don't suffer the delusion of making money off of music anymore, so I just play it out.
All right.
Talk about your dream. You're really good.
yeah, you really are. Dear John was one of the ones that used your song.
Let's see.
I think so. Because I saw it recently and I was reading the credits.
There's so I have a song in the movie that's out right now called Sam and Kate, and I perform it in the film, and then and then I have a film that I was in called Niagara.
That's what I was saying. Okay, that was the one.
That was in the late '90s, and I had a song on that soundtrack. Yeah, I know.
All right, everybody, let's thank our guests for being here today.